right? Okay, questions on anything that you might have seen in there before we go to the next stop? Yes?
Can you explain the chicken's tails on some of them?
Chicken's tails?
Are they cut off? Or?
No, they're just hard-working women, and they get a little bit draggled when they're hard-working women.
They didn't have feathers in the back.
I mean, you know, we use the term peck order for a reason. And so yeah, they do work on each other a little bit, but primarily when and some of the birds are older.
Do you clip them?
No, we don't clip them. We don't clip them. So you know, when they work hard, when they're laying well, they actually don't look as pretty and pristine because they're working hard. I mean, that's the truth. I'm not making it up. Any other questions on what you've seen in here? I do want to address the one question that came in there that I didn't want to address until I had the whole group back together was, okay, so can this really feed the world? That's the number one question I get asked everywhere in the world. So let's deal with this. Realize, A, you just saw way more production per square foot than in a typical confinement house. We're not sacrificing, you know, production per square foot at all. Okay, we're actually increasing it because of the stackable, you know, because of the stacking. That's number one. Number two, when the industry says, oh, you know, if we put these animals out on pasture and all that stuff, you know, it would there's no way you could feed the world because there's not enough land. All right, what you don't see, what the industry doesn't show you when they show you, say, a Smithfield hog factory or a Tyson confinement house, is the hundreds of acres of grain producing the grain that goes into that house. Those houses are not standalone. The industry, you know, they worship those houses as if they're some sort of a magic thing, and the fact is, the animals in those houses are dependent on a massive amount of land to grow the grain to come into that house to feed those animals. Our animals are spread out here on the fields. Even if they didn't eat 1 ounce of pasture grass and ate the same amount as the birds in the Tyson house, it wouldn't take 1 ounce more grain or more land to feed the birds out on the pasture than it does in a Tyson chicken house. Are you with me? So those, you know, very intensive houses are not standalone structures. They are completely dependent on an energy flow, a tillage flow, and a grain flow that feeds into them. All right? And so not only can we feed the world with these systems, it's the only system that actually can feed the world because we're way more productive than other systems. All right? I mean, I could say a lot more about that, but I'll let it ride there, unless you have more questions about can we feed the world. I think it's important too to understand in historical context that the kinds of technology that we're using. I don't want anybody leaving here today saying, "Oh, we went to this farm. It was like Grandpa's farm." Grandpa would have given his eye teeth for the stuff we have. I mean, I can show you know, we can stand here and in 10 minutes I can show you 12 things that literally did not exist 40 years ago. That 15-year UV stabilized laminated plastic, okay, to be able to put a solar cover on something that lasts 15 years and allows you to use solar heat, that didn't even exist 40 years ago. All right, those extruded pipe, simple little structures, okay, that didn't exist. You know, pneumatic tires on the eggmobiles were in their infancy. a bandsaw mill right over here. These are bandsaw mills that we mill our own lumber so that we can make simple little slats and small diameter lumber out of an 800 pound mill that you can pull behind your Honda Civic, and it runs on a 20 horsepower Honda engine with 2 gallons of fuel in a day. Those things didn't even exist 40 years ago. 40 years ago, if you wanted lumber, it was 40 tons of pig iron and a big Detroit diesel engine, 100 horsepower, running a great big blade that took a 1/4 inch of sawdust every turn. You couldn't afford to make lath because you burned up all your wood in sawdust. Here, we take a kerf that's only 1/10 of an inch. So we can make lumber, on the farm with a little simple machine. Electric fencing, all of these things are high-tech innovations that allow us to better capitalize on solar energy and localized resource development rather than a stationary factory in a city somewhere. They've allowed the divestiture of the value-added processing that used to all have to happen in a great big factory has now been miniaturized in the information age. Keith Kelly, the editor of Wired magazine, talks about the fundamentals of the information-based economy, and one of the principles is that everything's been miniaturized, downsized, and restructured. The 120-pound secretary has been replaced by a 4-ounce mail router. Okay, and so this miniaturization is allowing for in an unprecedented time of innovation and creativity for relocalizing all of this stuff that used to happen in big factories that people had to drive to, now can be done right on the farm, right on site, so we can we can mill the logs right next to where they grow, instead of having to take them somewhere.
What's the difference in nutritional quality between what you produce and what Tyson produces?
The nutritional quality between what we produce and what Tyson produces. Wow. It's huge. There are numerous measures. One of the largest measures, one of the easiest things you can measure, and anybody can do this. You can do this in your own home. That's why I'm going to tell you about it. In fact, this came to us from the local dietitian at the hospital. She got chickens and used her laboratory to run fat tests on it, and began prescribing our chickens to the heart patients as they exited the hospital, because our polyunsaturated fat is about 3 times what the polyunsaturated is in a Tyson chicken, but our saturated fat is only 1/3 as much as the saturated fat. There are good fats and there are bad fats. And what you want are the real malleable polyunsaturates. When you cook a chicken and you take the broth off and you put the broth in a jar in a refrigerator, and the hard stuff, the saturated runs to the top, and forms a hard little crust on top. Okay, our chicken broth fat, all right, never gets hard. If you do a Tyson chicken, it'll feel like paraffin wax. Well, what's that doing in your arteries? Okay, and so that is a very specific difference that anybody can measure and see. Empirically, from a nutritional density, whether it's B vitamins, conjugated linoleic acid, C, minerals, those kinds of things, it doesn't even look like the same product. It's totally different because of the green material that the animals are eating.
Right.
Now again, this is the winter, this is the 100-day winter time right here, but the 250 days of the year they're out. Everything is out on the page. If you come back in middle of March, all these houses will be empty and everything will be out on pasture. Okay, let's head on up the field, and we're going to head to the cows.